Okay, so Yamini left. How? Why? Okay, back again.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't worry. Whenever you want.
Okay, then I'll start now. Thank you, Alessio. Hello, everyone. My name is Yamini, and I'll be the speaker for today's seminar. And the topic is Universal Knowledge Core. So today we will be looking at it in the aspect of its current status and the new functionalities that are included. Universal Knowledge Core, which we commonly in the group address it as UKC, is a large-scale multilingual lexical and diversity-aware resource, which has a composition of two distinct layers, one being the language-independent component and the other being the language-dependent component. Now, I know I address here many descriptive terms. So, as we proceed in the seminar, we will look at each of these terms in an exemplar manner. So, to begin with, here are just some numbers that give us the insight and giving us the example of how large this lexical resource is. So, the language layer covering over 1,000 languages, and the concept layer having more than 120,000 concepts. So, looking at the diversity aspect of the resource, here is a diagrammatic representation for it. So, this diagram provides a clear distinction between the concept core and the language core. Inside the language core, we have the two different colored boxes, each representing a language. So, the green one is the English language and the yellow one is the Italian language for this example. So let's begin with the first example. So here, when we see uh, the facility word sense in the English language, which is the green color box, and now this word sense is connected to a unique ID in the concept code, and that in turn is connected to another word sense, and thus showing that there is a lexicalization for the word facility in the Italian language as well. And Another example would be looking at the child concept here of the restaurant. Even restaurant is lexicalized in English language and in the Italian language, and thereby giving us the word sense of restaurant. And when we look down on the green in the green box, we can see restaurant, comma eatery. So this is a an instance of a synset for the word sense. Now, these two are the common vocabulary, and thus provides the lexicalization in both the languages, and which is common. So now, when we move on to another example, so here is the word sense in the yellow box known as the Malga. So this particular word sense consists a unique ID in the concept core. Um uh, because there is a lexicalization of the term at least in one language. But moving on, when we go to the when we look at the connection in the English box, there is no term to describe the meaning, and thus it's an English gap. It's a English lexical gap. However, we have a description in the English language, which is basically it's a typical alpine building used for summer housing or for stabling. And in the similar fashion, when we look at the other example of a pub, which is a child concept of facility, so we have the word sense in the English language. However, there is no lexicalization in the Italian language, and thus giving us a lexical gap in the Italian language. So now these two are the example of the language specific concepts. And how UKC includes this. And also it provides us a feature of giving gloss to these word senses in the common language, and thereby making it easy for everyone to understand. So moving on, now we see the evolution of UKC, which would give us the idea regarding the size, its multilinguality, and also the size of the resource. So to begin with, we have the Mongolian WordNet, which was the project done in the Knowdive group with major contributions by our senior members, Hyoga and Gaber. So this is a very noticeable size of a WordNet for the Mongolian language. So in the similar fashion, we have yet another resource developed by the group, having UKC as the base and currently in which is imported in the UKC. So here the other resource is the Cognet, which provides us the sense relations, which is basically providing um, cognate pairs now, which connects the two words having the same meaning in two different languages. The third resource is the Scottish Gaelic. Now, this language is a minority language and was built as combination of a freely available resource and through the expert from the language expert using the translation and using having the help from a translator and a validator who is the native speaker of the language. And moving on, here we have the um, the green colored boxes which represent the resources that were available, freely available on the internet. So the first one would be the open multilingual WordNets, which provide us a wide base of diverse languages that we have in the UKC. And then the next one is the Indo WordNet. So this focuses on the Indian languages, 16 Indian languages that are present in the UKC. So here we have currently we have the project that has already been worked. Um, that has already been worked, but it is going to be improved by our group member Nandu, which will provide us more lexical gaps and also provide more coverage for these Indian languages. So the next resource here is the Panlex, and this again is now when I say these resources are freely available, however, it requires the process of mapping these IDs which are suitable for the UKC resource and thereby which can be imported into the instance. So again, a Panlex covers over 200 different languages and thereby giving us a wide range of words and other lexical data. Sorry. So the next resource in the list is Sadilar. Now this resource provides us 5 different African languages, and for African languages, this number provides a very good a WordNet, a very good, rather meaningful WordNet size. And in the similar fashion, we have another resource, which is the North Uralics. Now, this focuses on the northern Eurasia and covers over 100 languages. And in the similar fashion, it provides us a good number of lexical information. And the final one in the table here is the native language of Americas. Now, this resource focuses on the native American Indian languages, not just belonging to the common family of American Indian, but also focuses on 25 to 30 other smaller language groups. And on the right side, as we can see, here are some overall numbers. So as I mentioned in the beginning about the total number of concepts in the languages, in terms of words, it contains over 2 million for now. So moving on, this is the next segment in the seminar, which focuses on the new introduction. So this is the first time we planned on showing the UKC website to this cluster of people here. So for now, it's going to be a local instance, which I'll be showing on my computer, but it is expected to be soon deployed and accessible by everyone on this specified URL here. And this work contains major contributions from the master thesis student Erdene, who is the who is the front-end developer, and myself as the back-end developer, and Gabar, who is in charge of the management and also has provided certain contributions to the aesthetics and also the functioning of the website. And finally, Fausto managing the entire process. So with this website, we want to provide people the ability to see and the feature to see the lexicons that we have imported and spoken about in the previous slides and also for a long time now. So it provides us a visualization, and we can also see which languages require more attention, uh, and thereby giving us aspect of the language diversity, improvement of minority languages as well. And this does not just stop here. This is just the first step. And the idea is to improve this using the crowdsourcing and also provide APIs which would help people to access the data in particular as and when they require and as per their functionalities. So now we move on to the website. So this is the homepage of the website, and this contains three major components that we'll be looking at today. And the idea is to improve on this and add on more services, components, and so on. So the first one we'll be looking at is the lexicons component. So here we have two major parts, which for the first one is the drop-down menu, where we can choose from the variety of languages the any language we want to look for. And on the right side, we have the search bar where we can type in the word and look up for its lexical information. So here, the first thing that I'll be showing as an example is of car, and we can go through all the senses that are provided. So apart from this, also on the right, in the middle, we have the world map, which showcases all the languages that are present. Each circle represents a language, and when we hover over the circle, we can actually see the size. See the statistics of the particular language, and also some linguistic information such as the family it belongs to. So when we look at this example here, okay, this contains many concepts. Oh, however, so this is the concept ID that this word is connected to, and thereby giving the lemmas present in the synset. And we have the gloss as well, which gives us a description of the word sense and the part of speech it belongs to. So here we have the different concept relations. So a car is an automobile and ambulance and so on. In any way it is connected. And the next, this is just one type of relation. So it also has the part of relation which is showcased on the right side here. So which we can zoom in and look at the particular component that we want to see. And the other tab here, which is the sense relations, which are basically the cognate relation. So it provides us the word in other languages as well. So for now, we do not have the gloss for this particular word in that language, and thereby this can be one such service, one such feature that can be included in the crowdsourcing, and thereby improving the coverage in the coverage of the UKC as a resource. So moving on, we can look at the next part, which are the visualizations. So here, the aim is to showcase some, though a basic notion, showcase some similarities between the languages based on different scales, such as here, the first thing we see is the similarity between two languages which belong to the same language family. So here the graph that we look at contains the nodes and the edges. So the nodes represent a language, and the same colored nodes belong to the same family. And the distance between each pair of node represents how similar or different they are. So here, when we hover over these nodes, we can see certain Indian languages, so how they are grouped together and thus showing the similarity they have in their lexicons as they belong to the same family. Also, before proceeding, I would like to mention that these statistics are based on the cognate resource. So again, the cognate pair of words, and yeah. So moving on to the next graph here, we look at the nodes. Now, the depiction is the similar concept, but the factor that it focuses on is the geographical distance two languages have. So here, each color represents the distance between. So all these same colored are geographically closer to, geographically belong to the same part, and thus have lesser distance. So yeah, so as you can see here, these are all the European languages which are clustered together because of the distance. So moving on, this is yet another visualization. As I mentioned in the beginning, in the previous tab, that this world map contains the circles representing a language, and the different sizes here represents the different size of the lexicon, and the color represents the language family it belongs to. So all the blues are grouped together, and all the greens are grouped together in a language family. And the final visualization here is a logarithmic scale. Now this shows the lexicon sizes in terms of the language family. So for instance, the Indo-European in this instance contains the maximum number of lexicons, as it contains the languages with with a large number of lexical data, such as Spanish, Italian, English, and so on. So as we go down, we notice that uh, the smaller, as we go down, the resources in these language families are lesser, and gives us an opportunity to know and to work and to improve these minority languages, and thereby probably change the shape of the graph sometime in future. So moving on, the next component here of the website are the projects. Now this projects tab shows the ongoing projects as well as the completed projects, which are done over the span of 10 years now. So the first one is the database of lexical similarities. So here was an opportunity to look through the similarities and differences between the languages. So as we already did. So the next project here in the list is the Mongolian WordNet. So this is a completed project, and the Mongolian WordNet is now available at its designated website. So where we can find the statistics, we can download the resource, and we can also see the people behind the development of the resource. So in the similar fashion, we have the completed projects of Cognate and the minority language Scottish Gaelic as well. And the other two projects which are ongoing are the Indo-WordNet mappings. So this again is a major work done by our group member Nandu. And the other project here is the development of the MorphiNet, so which would provide us a multilingual database of the derivational morphology. Now, moving on to the next part, which are the services. So this is the first service that is available at this moment, but the idea is to extend this and provide as many services as possible. So when we look at the word translation here, the idea is to provide a translation from the source language to the target language. So here we can begin with Italian, for instance. So yeah, so here when we type in the word from the source language, in this case it is English, and the word is bike. So we get the translations in the Italian. So here we would get the different senses that are present which are connected to their corresponding concept and the part of speech they belong to, providing us the description and so on. And so yeah, this is it about the website. Now going back to the seminar. Yeah, so as I already mentioned that the current services are the word translation that we are able to provide as of now. So the idea is to increase these number of services. So the next planned services which are to be implemented would be the visualization of the lexical gaps. As I showed an example in the beginning, it would be very interesting to view in a graphical way the lexical gaps in a language. And the next service that would be interesting which would be part of the UKC website can be the crowdsourcing. Now, as I mentioned, there are certain cases where the glosses are missing, where we do not have the description in their own language. Now, this can be a task which can be executed almost correctly by a native speaker, and thereby improving the coverage of the resource as well. So the next service that is planned would be to be able to perform the NLP tasks on this resource. So for instance, to be able to do the common task of the word sense disambiguation. So that would be a great deal for a resource to be able to provide support for. And the final service would be the data set distribution, um, where the idea is to provide language specific data or the entire resource itself, or depending on the collaboration and the requirement from the university or the organizations. Apart from all this, providing services, developing a resource requires a main component, which is the management of it. Because this is not just limited to a certain time, the idea is to improve and evolve, to increase and keep it alive as well. So here are some of the reasons of why we need the UKC management. As we have already seen, a resource having the evolution, and which is also extended over time. Now, apart from this, it is also important to keep a check on the quality of the resource and keep improving as and when there are some issues, or there is some change required in the resource. Not only these, as we witnessed that there are some other projects that are completed and ongoing, which are connected or correlated to the UKC. And so to be able to provide the specific resources for those projects is also a task which has to be handled in the process of the management. And the final one would be the metadata. So as we saw just now, the website providing the visualizations and providing us the details of the languages and so on requires the standardized specific metadata. So to carry out this task of UKC management, here are the list of the things that can be briefly put together. So the first one would be the maintenance of the metadata. So it is not only the the resource, the metadata, that is important, which contains the information of the data sets that are used to build the UKC or that are distributed in the future or so on, but also the linguistic aspect of it, to have the correct information of the language, such as which language family it belongs to, its coordinates in our case in the geographical map, and so on. And to support this evolution of UKC, the extension of UKC, the tools
We have connection issues today.
hello, sorry again.
Don't worry.
So yeah, continuing with the management components. So
You are not still sharing the screen, I guess.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on with the management processes. So the first thing would be to have tools that are tools that support us with the extension and evolution of UKC in terms of maintenance of it and also improvement as and when uh, there is some kind of requirement or also to improve the process as such by, for example, trying to complete the process with a lesser duration of time. And the third component here would be to have the tools to support the deployment. Now that the plan is to have the website up and running, it would definitely have some issues, hopefully not, but in case there are issues, we should be able to resolve it and we should have the appropriate tools to do so and a methodology to be followed. And the third is to do now import and export of the data sets into the UKC and from the UKC are very basic processes. And to be able to automate these processes help um, will help the coordinator of the resource as such to reduce the time consumption and also to provide uh, uh, resources at a faster instance. And the final component would be the maintenance of the resources, the all the variety of resources that are mentioned throughout the seminar. Now, as we have seen, it contains a large number of resources, and not only are these resources just limited to this version, there can be many more versions which are improved and later there can be distributions of certain data sets as well, and those can have different versions, and they need to give the information of the resources that are contained inside it and so on. So all these requirements need to be processed in a very good manner. So for this purpose, there is a start. We began doing the organization of resources with the current data sets as such. So here is the hierarchical process that we follow. So here is a small description where we have the input resources and the data sets that are existent in the UKC and the dumps, which would be which are the entire collective UKC database as such, and the other auxiliary files that would support these management processes. So to have a better understanding, we would now look at the GitLab structure of these resources. So as I mentioned in the diagram, here we have the four layers in the hierarchical structure. So the first one would be the input resources. Now, these input resources are here. It is not yet completed, but the idea is to have project for each such resource in their original format and also a script which would enable us to convert it into the format which can be utilized further for the UKC. And in the second layer, in the second layer, we have the distinction of the concept core and the language core. So in the concept core, we have only the files from the UKC, which are just specific to the concept core, which provide us the independent feature. And similarly, for the language core, we contain the files that are just specific to the language, where we have project for each individual language that is present in the UKC. And in the third component, the idea is to have the dump in the SQL format for independent for each particular project as per the requirement of the resource. And the final layer here would be the auxiliary files, so which provide us the support like the metadata files or the mapping files that help us map the IDs of the external resource to our own resource. So continuing with the presentation. So apart from these, there are certain ideas that sorry, that are aimed to be followed and executed in the near future. So the first such thing in mind and in plan and process is the live language project. So the idea is to be able to provide this evolving resource. As we saw, the first step is um, the deployment of the UKC website, which would provide us the browsing services, the navigation services, the visualizations, and all the other services that are listed previously, and also provide the idea is to have a catalog for going through the resources, and which would provide the collaborating organizations or the institutions to look through the resources and find uh, required one, or maybe contact us for the further distribution, or maybe even download it, as we plan to do so. And the third one would be to have the expert and the crowdsourcing tools. So as I've given an example of being able to complete the missing components in the resource, this would require a standard procedure and the standard tools to do so. So the idea is to include to develop these as well. And the final one, as we saw, the GitLab organization of the resources. So this would help us maintain the resources and as inside the group as such. So moving on, in the next task that we will work on would be improving the size of the lexical gaps that are present in the UKC. So for now, we have been able to find these lexical resources. Now the idea is to structure it and import it into the UKC. So during the development of the Scottish Gaelic WordNet, we found about 600 lexical gaps in the Gaelic language, and in the recent work on the Native American languages, we have around 650 lexical gaps. And as a result of these two above projects, there are lexical gaps in English as well, so numbered to be around 130. And from the IndoWordNet, we have had 3,000 lexical gaps, which have the high possibility to be increased in number in future. And the third part here that we will work on would be to further develop the UKC, but not in terms of reaching out to more languages. Yes, that's a part of it, but the first priority would be to have more coverage with the existing languages to improve certain missing components, and to improve the existing languages in the UKC. And the final component in this list for this particular idea is to improve the quality as such of the contents. Now, this it would be finding probably certain issues in terms of the senses that certain words are connected to, or the ID mapping, or so on, which are feasible which are possible while doing the import of such a variety of resources. And this is aimed at being completed in the manual or an automated process. So that's all from my part. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yamini. So if there are any questions, you can raise your hand or type it in the chat. In the while, I do have a curiosity. Okay. So if you can go on slide 4, I guess. Yeah. Here there are a lot of languages. There is any overlap between the languages included into those resources, or they are all separate?
No, there's a huge overlap of the languages because the languages that we get from the Open Multilingual WordNet and the Panlex are very much similar, and thereby for now we just find for now we are able to combine the resources from both combine the lexical components from both the resources. So for instance, we import the Open Multilingual WordNet for a certain language and then add on the other lexical information for that particular language from Panlex resource as well. So yes, there is an overlap.
Okay, and I mean, if some, I mean, I imagine that there could be errors or like things that are mismatching between the resources. Is it the case, or they are completely compatible one to the other?
Actually, the Panlex resource, for instance, as we receive, it is not just utilized from there. There is a manual work of mapping to the IDs, and later we do the import. So there are some issues, but it is not much of a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John, go on.
Yes. Hi, Yamini.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for the presentation. Can you open the page 11, please? Yeah. So, as far as I understand from the presentation, the lexical gaps should happen the language pairs, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, here is you are mentioning that 600 lexical gaps in Gaelic, 130 for English. So, which the other language is? What is the other language you compare with to find these lexical gaps?
So the idea is these 600 gaps are specific to this language. So there is lexicalization for a certain term in the Gaelic language. So there are 600 such cases where the words just are present in this language and not in any other language.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And so,
I understand.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Subhashish.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the presentation. So I have a question for the future. Like I heard that there is a plan to import some language from link open data vocabulary, and people are doing work to codify using UKC IT. So my question is what is the plan to do that kind of thing, and what is your view? Because while they are doing the work to import those dataset from link open data vocabulary, they have only option to encode with the noun but not adjust the verb or adjective. So I want to know how you are going to deal those things.
Honestly, I do not have such an idea about how we would be able to do it, but probably we would proceed with the noun and later have a discussion about how we can handle the verb and the adjective component.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Any other question? We still have time.
Maybe Yamini, you could. You didn't say anything about the domain languages, but you did show them. Maybe I know it's very early work, but I think people could be interested in how we connect everything together on the domain languages.
You mean in terms of the repository that I showed?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So going back to the repository component here, the resources entirely is for this design is for the knowledge levels L1 and L2, so which are the concept component and the language component. So here, each hierarchical level has its own domain specific components as well. So the first one, which I showed for the UKC, belongs to the common sense domain. And then here we have the health domain, which includes the data sets from the ICD, SNOMED, CT, and so on. And so the idea is to have have the similar structure that has been implemented for the common sense component. So for each, so here for instance, yeah. So for common sense, we have the concept core component as well. So the idea is to have a similar way for the health domain and for the space domain. So for now, the work is done only in terms of the input resources, but it'll be future extended to the other layers as well, where we have the health specific dump, health domain specific dump as per the project requirement and so on.
Danish, go on.
Hi, Yamini. Thank you very
Hello.
much. It was a very nice presentation. I'm just curious about the domain language that you mentioned just now. Do you have any plan of any services that are related to domain knowledge, domain languages that you are thinking to offer in the UKC website?
I don't think there'll be any domain specific component in the UKC website. As of now, there is no such idea of having that in the UKC website. Probably there would be some other platform for that.
Yeah, most likely they will go into L4, into live schema. They'll have to be enriched in live schema. But live schema, to do that, we'll have to connect it to live language, which is we need to be able to link the schemas, which are the knowledge level, into the language. This is ongoing work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danish.
Sorry, I just one other question.
Sure.
Because we have time. It's I think okay. So probably it should have been the first question, then the other one. So the UKC website now, is it by any means connected with the GitLab? Because I'm like a little more closely working with it, so maybe it's not relevant for everybody, but just a curiosity.
So for now, it is not yet connected. So maybe later time we have the functionality of the of having the sign up and login probably. So based on this, maybe depending on the different access levels, people can access the GitLab as well. So it would be probably for the internal for the group itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a joke. The source code of the website is stored on the GitLab. Wani, go on.
Hi, Yamini. Thanks
Hello.
for your presentation. So I'm very interested in the UKC hierarchy, which you were showing in the GitLab. So I saw there were two files inside. Yeah, the first one is concept core. The second one is language core. So I was just wondering, so what's inside these files and how can we use that? So for example, if I have two words and I want to know if their concept has relationships between each other, how can I do? So for example, I have one word, which is motor car. Another one is just a car. And I want to know if there is a relation, like parent relationships or whatever, beside them. How can I use these two files? Can I use these files?
Yeah. So when you're looking for the information in terms of the concepts itself, you can actually go through this. And so this concept core contains the CSV files which follow the structure of the database. So for instance, we have the concepts as such, which would contain the information of the the global concept ID, the local ID, and the label it is connected to. So we have other platforms such as the dump itself, which would provide you the entire connection, or we have the interface. For now, we have the UKC website where we can type in the word and get the ID. Otherwise, we can find the local concept ID from the concept core, and then link it with the particular language you want to look for in the language core.
Okay, so if I want to do this kind of task, I need to use both of these files, right?
Yeah, but
go ahead, Yamini.
Yeah, so the initial purpose of doing this, to have the distinction of such UKC hierarchy, was to rebuild the entire UKC as such for a particular language without having to spend a lot of time. Because the task of importing and generating an instance takes time. So instead, when we have this kind of format where we just have to get the CSV files independently just for concepts or just for a particular language, we can replicate the work to develop another instance within just few minutes. So that was the idea behind this.
Right, which is Yamini. Yes, in general, there are two layers over which you work. You can work on the language research, or like you, if I understand your question correctly, you want to use the language hierarchy rather than working on the language hierarchy. And in this case, the idea would be that we should be setting up a procedure by which we just install a version for you. So the UKC will be like a process running somewhere on some machine, and then you just call APIs. As simple as that. This is where we need to get. We are getting there. In fact, if you remember, there are the instances, and right, there was in the folder, there is the instances, like the dumps, and the idea, you just install a dump, you ask us the language you want, we just install it for you. And then you just call the functions, you just go use the APIs.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
You have just like in your work to assume there is a, and we need to do this, not have done there, but we're getting there. It's just going to be like a service, just to call it like APIs. It could be, and it should be callable from anywhere in the world in due time, if you know the APIs.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wani. Is there any other question? We still have 8 minutes. Well, if no other,
maybe I can say a few words. So I don't have a question because I was involved in the project. But as Yamini said, this website is now going online. So it's already online on the VPN. So it's accessible from inside the university, right? So also thanks to Alessio for having deployed it, which was not an easy task. We have to ask to Veronica to connect it to the external domain name, which is ukc.datascientia.eu. From that moment, it will be accessible from everywhere. Basically, it will be on the internet. So it is a fun website to use to explore the languages. I'm saying this to encourage you to connect and try it out as soon as it will be available. You can play with it. You can explore the relationships between languages. And please, I'm saying all this, that if you find any mistakes, either in the data, so in your language, Chinese or whatever, Turkish, whatever language you speak. So if you find mistakes in the content, we are interested to know. And if you find bugs in the website itself, so in the code, we are interested to know as well. So please send an email to me or Yamini, and that will be very helpful to us. This is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabor. So if there are no other questions, I think that we can stop here. So thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Yamini, for your presentation. And see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.